Want to say good morning formally to everyone who's watching. I'd like to welcome you to our conversation this month on Nonprofit Utopia. Um, ah, in Nonprofit Utopia, we're going to be focusing on hitting the reset button. And speaking of hitting the reset button, I need to join everybody in hitting the reset button. We have had significant, unexpected changes um, for the year 2020. And normally we look at June to reset, but this time we might end up having to pivot given the gravity of the changes that have occurred as a result of COVID-19. And before I do that, I want to back up and introduce myself. I'm Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia, and we are the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders, particularly those emerging nonprofit leaders who are looking to develop new solutions to their individualized issues. We have an online forum where we can discuss issues in a very safe space. We also have classes, we have webinars, we have discussions like this one, and a number of other activities in which you can engage in order to increase your leadership capacity as well as work on creating a sustainable organization. So, as I was saying before, this month we're focusing on hitting the reset button, particularly in the age of COVID 19, which has turned a lot of our businesses, a lot of our nonprofits, and a lot of us as individuals turned our worlds topsy turvy. So, today we're going to focus on assessing our leadership skills. And we've got two tools, two very simple free tools that you can use. And if you're a member of the Nonprofit Utopia community, you can download those tools, you can work on them at your leisure, and we'll be holding office hours during the week to actually review what you have put together. We will also be looking at ways that you can assess your leadership style within your particular organization, looking at ways to assess your organization and creating a blueprint for sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, we're not necessarily talking solely about fundraising. We're talking about putting those systems in place that will give you the staying power so that you can indeed last, beyond the COVID-19 um, epidemic, or shall I say pandemic. And then we're also going to be looking at developing a visioning board. I think that'll be a fun exercise for us. We'll be looking at pictures in magazines and other symbols, putting those together to represent the goals, our aspirations for the upcoming year. And then we're going to close out by completing a visioning canvas. And those of us who are looking to make changes during the middle of the year, this is a wonderful way to do it because we'll be looking at change within the context of what the community needs, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and what your assets and liabilities are to create an actionable new vision. So without further ado, I don't think this is going to take very long. I just want to walk through two free tools that you can use. They're very simple, and you can use these tools not only to assess your capacity for leadership and your leadership skills, but you can use these also to better understand what type of environment you would thrive in. You can also use it, with as a precursor to a strategic planning process, a hiring process, a program designing process to get a better sense for how you fit within the scheme of things. But most importantly and immediately, for right now, you want to use this as a basis for an individual leadership plan, and we'll talk about that at another meeting. Alrighty, so I'm going to share my screen, and if you can just bear with me for just a moment, I want to share these tools with you. Okay, so can you see my screen, Lisa?
Nope, I still see you. Oh, there it is. Yep, I got it.
All righty. All right, so this tool is in our community. You will see a link to it in the community, and I think I need to probably share the link again because this has been posted a while. This is a tool that we refer all of our new members to, and as well as our, current members. And this is the Leadership is Fit tool, and this was put together by the Human Systems Dynamic Institute. And this assessment tool was designed to get a sense for, or help you get a sense for how you best, what types of environments you best fit in. Do you better fit within a traditional environment where there's much more structure, it's more hierarchical, or do you fit in a structure that's really not so structured? The hierarchy is much flatter and it may not even be a hierarchy. And many people would probably describe these environments as, flying by the seats of your pants. So if you're one who really enjoys structure, you may not do so well in an environment where there is, not so much structure, and an environment where there may not necessarily be systems in place, but these are there are opportunities to put the systems in place, and there are opportunities to look at problems in a more innovative way. So I'm going to walk you through this model. And again, this was put together by the Human Systems Dynamic Institute, and this was developed by Glenda Eoang, PhD, and I might not be pronouncing her name properly, but I'm just pronouncing it as it's spelled. And basically, what she's saying is, we all have the capacity to succeed, but our environment can really determine how far we can go, especially within the context of our own temperament. So she has designed this tool to help us get a sense for what a traditional leadership perspective is. And she was saying that's on one extreme. And in this extreme, the leader focuses on prediction and control. And that's a model that most of us, at least if you're within my age bracket, that's what we grew up with. I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that people who are in corporate environments, many of them in leadership have also experience. So there's a strong emphasis on control, predictability, accountability, reliability, and stability and maintenance. And that's not a bad thing, but sometimes when those environments become too rigid, it stifles creativity and sometimes it even stifles motivation. On the other extreme, we've got the complex adaptive leadership perspective, and in that perspective, the leader gives up control and explores open space of opportunity. And this approach also has benefits, and these include emergence, innovation, patterns, surprise, creativity, and creative destruction. And quite frankly, if you're one who thrives in this type of environment, this pandemic is probably creating serious, serious opportunities for you, and you're probably taking advantage of them right about now. All right, so the following pages include questions to help a leader recognize where their leadership style fits along this continuum. But remember, any part of the continuum can work for or against you, but you always have to make sure that your actions correspond with and fit within the environment in which you want to succeed. Often we find ourselves to be fish out of water. We may be more rigid individuals plucked in an environment where innovation and fluidity are king, and we find ourselves failing, and vice versa. We might find ourselves in a more rigid environment, and we're more innovative. And you'll find too that these styles are also prevalent, one more the other, not only within our particular personalities, but you'll find that baby boomers and those in the following generation, I believe the Generation Xers, we tend to be more traditional, whereas our millennials and those coming behind the millennials tend to be less structured, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their approach is wrong. They tend to be a little bit more fluid in their approaches and more innovative. So, getting back to this tool, basically, what this is saying is your actions correspond with the environment in which you want to succeed. In the same way you wouldn't want a wild and crazy buddy to run a nuclear power plant, you also wouldn't want to expect a tight-laced colleague to flex and easily seize a new market opportunity. You can build the capacity to shift among the continuum, and really that's really the key to effective leadership, being able to read the environment and then make the appropriate pivots. So, no organizational situation stays the same for long, especially in this current environment. And as a leader, you should be able to shift from more or less control when the environment demands it. So, as you respond to the questions and consider your profile, think about where you are now, where you've been before, and how easily you find it to shift from one to the other. The final page of this packet provides tips to improve your leadership fit. And if you have questions about this tool or want more information about leadership as fit, contact Jay Walter at hsdinstitute.org. And also, we do have this tool in the nonprofit Utopia community, so you can download it if you're a member, download it and complete it and score it. And then we'll be doing office hours this weekend, not this weekend, this Wednesday, for you to go over it. And I'll share my results as well, so it won't be like you're on the spot. All right. So if you want to explore other systems, human systems dynamics tools and concepts, visit them at hsdinstitute.org. They have a number of tools that you can use, and you'll find those to be very helpful if you're in an environment, if you work in HR, or if you work in an environment where you're trying to affect change within a culture of an institution. All right, so without further ado, let's go to the tool itself. The first thing we want to do is assess our capacity. So the instructions are to select the one or two best answers to each question below. If all choices are equally appealing, then leave it blank. Darken the circle or circles to indicate which answer or answers you choose. And when you complete all questions, count the number of A's, B's, C's, and D's that you selected. And then you're going to record the numbers in the totals column. And then you're going to plot the cumulative total for each on the profile on page 7. So for example, and this is not really for example, I just want to go over the first few questions, and then we'll look at a sample profile. All right, so question 1. When I work with my boss, A, I guarantee specific outcomes. B, I shape expectations for outcomes. C, I indicate what I expect as outcomes. D, acknowledge that outcomes will emerge over the span of the project. So as you can see, these questions are designed not only for you to get a sense for whether or not, you know, for your style, but it also give you a sense for whether or not you would fit better in a more rigid situation or a more fluid situation. And for me personally, I'll take a crack at it. Depending on the situation, for me, when I'm working with a client, and my clients are my bosses, I if I guarantee a specific outcome, I'm going to make sure that if I guarantee those outcomes, I also create a situation in which there is mutual accountability. Because, when you're in consulting, when you're in training, you are not solely, you don't have full control over the outcome of specific situations. So I will describe what's necessary for success. I will share tools for success, but I will also indicate, you know, what my clients need to do in order for us to have a successful outcome. So there's joint accountability. So I would say under A, I would answer A and B. So I'm trying to manage expectations at every turn because, again, I am not solely responsible, or I don't have sole control over the outcome. And for you, Lisa, how would you respond to question one?
Actually, exactly as you did, which is why I was so drawn to you. We think very similarly. I guarantee outcomes, or if I do guarantee an outcome, I work um, numbingly to make sure that I accomplish what I promise.
Mm-hmm.
Then, also, I've learned as a mother of such a huge group of people that sometimes you just have to make sure your expectations are known and then leave room for personal style.
Mm-hmm.
But I rarely indicate what I expect and then leave everyone else to it. I'm pretty controlling in that regard. Because if
Mm-hmm.
I promise something, it's my reputation on the line.
Right.
And I acknowledge that outcomes will emerge over the span of the project, but for the most part, leadership for me means keeping the train on the tracks. So there is room for things that come up, and you have to be flexible. But I'm completely number A, or letter A, and B, without a
Okay.
doubt. I'm a traditional leader.
Mm-hmm. And it would be interesting, I would love it for some of the younger people in our community to respond. It'll be interesting to see what their responses are versus people, in my age bracket. I'm on the tail end of the baby boom. So it'll be very interesting to see what their.
But if they do respond, I'd be interested to hear anecdotes about how their outcomes are achieved, because I tend to be a little, value programmed into my belief system of traditional leadership. And I get worried about the less formal forms of leadership, in terms of, I picture the bean bags at certain corporations, and the that sort of really flexible work environment, and it stresses me out completely. I wouldn't be able to even believe work was getting done. So I'd like to hear how, then I'd like to learn,
Yeah.
not judge, but learn how they're achieving their outcomes timely
Hmm.
and efficiently with that leadership style. Because it's nice to be friendly, but are we getting things done as quickly as you can if you just keep the ball moving forward?
Hmm.
I'd like to know.
Yeah, those are very good questions. Very good questions. So I'm going to skip down to four, because the goal is not to actually do this, but, I
Right.
just want to give people, a good flavor so that when we're off this call, people will have a good understanding as to how to complete the form. So number four, I believe that I can predict the reaction of a client or employee. Um, Letter A, all the time. B, most of the time. C, sometimes. D, never. For me, I would say most of the time. I can predict. There's sometimes things may hit me out of the blue, but most of the time I can predict the reaction, because I try to take the time to establish relationships, and I also try to make sure that I keep the lines of communication open and manage expectations. So through that process, you can kind of you give and you take, and you can really get to know people better and be able to get a feeling for what buttons to push and which buttons not to push. How about you, Lisa?
Well, broken record, but I agree with you. Um, Most of the time, and interestingly, it's not pre-predict. I used to be more of a pre-predictor where I thought I knew people, and I'm an empathetic person, so I do think I sense people's feelings about things, and I try to be open-minded about things. But as I've gotten older, I've learned that people can surprise me and I should keep my
Yes.
mind more open. So I feel like most of the time is true because I generally am hitting the nail on the head when it comes to things, but I'm willing and I that's where I'm falling more towards B with an A, chaser.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So I think you get a sense for how well this flows. I think it's a very simple tool. So what you do is for page one, and again, for those who are members of the nonprofit Utopia, there's a link to an article that has this PDF that you can download. So what you do is you add up the number of A's, the number of B's, C's, and D's, or rather you count them, and then you just indicate how many A's, B's, C's, and D's you got at the bottom here. All right. So you do the same thing on the second page, and then you do the same thing on page 3. So when you do your overall scores, you basically transfer your totals from page 1 onto this first line where it says total page 1. So you'll do for page 1 the total number of A's, total number of B's, C's, and D's, etc. And then you do the same for page 2 and page 3, and then you add them up and get your grand totals. All right, so they have given us directions and an example, and you can create a grid like this on your own. So it says in the table below, find the number that matches your responses in each category, and then you darken that box and all the boxes below it. The columns that result are the profile of your leadership framework. And in the example below, the scores were 12 A's, 5 B's, 6 C's, and 1 D. And the total adds up to 24 because he marked more than one answer on 4 items. So if you look at the purple shaded area, and then we look at how this can take us from one continuum uh, or from one extreme to another. And there's a continuum between traditional leadership perspective and a complex adaptive leadership perspective. So again, traditional leadership perspective, that's a tightly controlled environment on one extreme, very rigid and hierarchical. And then on the far extreme, there's complex adaptive leadership perspective, which is much more fluid. People who are more rigid might even consider this somewhat chaotic, depending on what your leadership preference is. And then we have everything in between. Okay, so this is what his grid looks like. So we are going to do this ourselves, and I'm going to make myself vulnerable. I'm going to share my scores with the nonprofit Utopia community during our office hours on Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and we're going to be asking people who participate to share their scores. All right, so here is a blank grid, and again, you can either download this and color it yourself, or you can replicate something like this on Excel. So you're going to do the same thing. So in the table below, find the number that matches your responses in each category. You want to darken that box and the boxes below it, and the columns that result are the profile of your leadership framework. And again, you're going to be looking at what your leadership preferences are on along a continuum. One extreme would be traditional leadership perspective, the other would be complex adaptive leadership perspective. And under the traditional leadership perspective, we'll be looking at things like control, predictability, objectives, accountability, reliability, stability, and maintenance. And then on the opposite extreme, we'll be looking at emergence, surprise, patterns, innovation, creativity, exploration, and creative destruction. And I believe most of us have some mixture of all of these traits, but some of us may be more dominant in on one area of the continuum than the other. So it'll be interesting to see how the members of the nonprofit Utopia community stack up. All right, so when we look at the interpretation and ways that we can improve our fit for leadership fit, if your profile fits your leadership context, then you might expect success in the marketplace, happy customers and employees, low stress for yourself and your close associates, ease with defining and moving towards strategic and tactical objectives, a reasonable cycle time for problem identification and resolution, and high productivity and motivation for you and your staff. However, if you are too traditional within your environment, suppose you're a traditional person and the context within your working is less rigid, then you might expect, um, if you're too traditional, lack of innovation in your products and services, the customers and or employees who feel like they're not being heard. You might have high stress when plans and expectations don't work out. Um, you might find difficulty in a new vision or moving strategically into the future. You might have a slow response time for seeing and responding to problems. And I'll bet a lot of that has to do with perfectionism and making sure that everything is just right before responding. And then you'll also encounter low productivity and motivation, not only for your staff, but for yourself as well. And when we as leaders are not motivated, it's very, very, very difficult to motivate others. So if you're experiencing these outcomes, consider shifting your approaches. Look again at how you answered the questions and see where you might stretch yourself toward the behavior of the C or the D. And then you select one or two shifts that seem doable and then try them for 1 week. And at the end of the week, take the assessment again and look for other ways to stretch toward the complex adaptive perspective. And again, I just want to remind you, we're going to be using these tools as a basis to um, create our individual leadership plans. So we're looking at the assessment of ourselves as leaders, as well as the assessment of our organizations to develop our leadership plans. Okay, coming back to this, if you are too complex adaptive, that is, if your profile leans to the right, it's more complex adaptive than the leadership context, then you might expect lots of new ideas, but lack of follow through, lots of talk and not enough action, high stress of surprise and lack of certainty for yourself, your staff, and your customers, frequent shifts in focus and strategy, and the same unsolved problems popping up over and over again, and exhaustion and anxiety for your staff as well as for yourself. So, if you're experiencing these outcomes, consider shifting to the more traditional leadership approaches. Look again at how you answered the questions and see where you might stretch yourself toward the behavior of the A or B. So, you notice that if you are leaning far to the right, with the C or D behavior, then you might consider making adjustments so that your behavior is more to the middle, right? And if you find yourself to the left with the A or B behaviors and you're too um, I'm sorry, if you're to the left and you're too rigid and too traditional, then you might incorporate approaches that allow for more flexibility and more creativity. So if you're experiencing outcomes, in which you have stress, because there's a lot of talking, not enough action, not enough follow through, then consider shifting to the more traditional leadership approaches. Again, look at how you answered the question and see where you might stretch yourself toward the behavior of A or B. And I realize I'm repeating myself, and then select one or two shifts that seem doable and try them for a week. And at the end of the week, take the assessment again and look for other ways to stretch toward the traditional leadership perspective. So, what I'm getting from this tool is balance is critical. If we are too traditional or if we're too um, adaptive, then we really create environments that are, you know, that make it difficult to keep people motivated, for one reason or the other. The key is to operate from the middle. All right, Lisa, did you have any questions or concerns before we look at our next tool? And if you're watching from Facebook Live or any of our other live streaming tools, please feel free to comment, write your questions down. I'll look at them. If you're a member of the nonprofit Utopia community, we will have office hours so that we can discuss this tool. All right, Lisa, did you have any comments or questions?
No, it's a great tool. I'll be looking to try and get myself closer to C.
Yeah, what I like about it is it's very, very simple and intuitive. I'm sure you've seen a lot of pretty complex tools, in your world, but what I like about this is it's free, it's simple, and it will hopefully, help me to be more self-aware and really start putting into action some things that I know that I need to make changes in
I
immediately.
agree with you. The simplicity of the tool really makes it more approachable, and it doesn't add anxiety to the problem. It actually seems to clarify things.
Right, right. It doesn't seem, yeah, I don't feel like there's something nebulous. I don't feel like I need to have a PhD to score it, let alone understand what it means. So anybody can try this at home. All right. So I'm going to go to our next tool. And this tool, I don't know, Lisa, if you've heard of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, as well as another book he wrote, Developing the Leaders Around You. Um,
It only vaguely sounds familiar. I've read so much that as I go through this, I may see things that spark my memory, but not off the top of my head.
Yeah, John Maxwell is, considered the foremost authority in leadership from a faith-based perspective as well as a corporate perspective, and a number of his lessons can be easily transferable Whether you're in a faith-based environment, a corporate environment, a nonprofit environment, he's done a really good study of human nature over the years and has shared some of his experiences, in leadership over the past, 30 or 40 years now. So this tool, he didn't write the tool, but this tool was adapted from a couple of his books. And this one in particular, Developing the Leaders Around You, which I believe has some similar lessons as you would find in the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So this is a very, very simple tool. If you thought that one was easy, this one is easier. Um, these The way it's divided, first of all, you do self-reflection questions, and then you have a series of scaled questions, which will make it very easy to score, very easy to spot patterns, at a glance. So, I chose these tools, one, because they're free, two, because they're easy, but three, they're universal. So the self reflection questions, very easy. Do I have a game plan for personal growth? Yes or no? Am I the leader of that plan? And in this case, when we talk about the leader of the plan, are you the one who started this, or are you doing it because your boss suggested that you did it? Or, is there another stakeholder who suggested that you did it, just so that the group can get a sense for who is sitting around the table and what their collective strengths and weaknesses are. Another question is, am I willing to change to keep growing, even if that means giving up my current position if I'm not experiencing growth? Is my life an example for others to follow? Yes or no? Am I willing to pay the price to become a great leader? Yes or no? And that price can take on many forms. It could be the price of time. It could be the price of hard lessons learned that you couldn't learn any other way except through your mistakes. It could literally be the cost of personal self-development. At any rate, whatever the price is, to get to where you want to be, are you willing to pay that price? Many of us want to make change, but we're not willing to pay the price. Okay, and then after you finish those self-reflection questions, then you have the scale questions on a scale of 0 to 4, 0 meaning never, one is seldom, two is sometimes, three is usually, and four is always. So, question A, I influence others, and then you answer that on a scale of 0 to 4. B, I have self discipline. Now, what is really interesting about this tool is it might also be helpful for you to score it, but then have someone that you work with, collaborate with, someone that knows you well, depending on the context within which you want to change your leadership abilities, have them to score this too as it relates to you. And then sit down and compare your scores about yourself to their scores. And it'll be interesting to see how you see yourself versus how others see you. You might have strengths that other people see that you don't see yourself. And at the same time, you might have blind spots or weaknesses that other people see that you don't see yourself. And, make sure that whoever you're working with to give you that feedback, make sure they give you honest feedback, give you the truth about yourself, so that you have a really good sense for how you might come across to others, and then you can make appropriate adjustments, if need be. Alrighty. So the way this works is you add up your total scores, and when evaluating your leadership potential, pay attention to your qualities as addressed by the characteristics than to the specific score. So since leaders are graded differently, scores may vary. And here's a grading scale that they recommend. So if you score between 90 and 100, you're a great leader and you should be mentoring other good and great leaders. And if you score between 80 and 89, you're a good leader and you have to keep growing and keep mentoring others. And mind you, the people that you're going to be mentoring are probably people who may score equal to or lower than yourself on such a scale. 70 to 79, you're an emerging leader and you should focus on growth and begin to mentor others. So the nonprofit utopia community, for the most part, we do have seasoned leaders, but we do have emerging leaders as well. That's who our primary focus is. And then if you score 60 to 69, you're bursting with potential and you're an excellent person to be developed. So if you get between 60 and 69, you probably should be looking for a mentor to help you. And if you score below 60, then you need growth and you're probably not ready to be mentored as a leader. You probably need to spend some time developing basic skills. And the good thing about this is you'll be able to immediately identify some of the gaps. And this information, again, can be used as you develop your own personal leadership plan, as you develop strategic plans, as you develop capacity building plans for your organization, as you round out teams within your department and on your board, and all of that good stuff. So on Wednesday, we're going to have, a members only call for Zoom where we talk about what our results have been, and ways that we might consider addressing some of our issues. And again, I'm going to put myself on the hot seat as well and share some of the results that I get. So without further ado, I'm going to open it up to questions. And it seems, Lisa, that you're the only person who is, in the Zoom space. But again, we're being joined by others on Facebook Live and other streaming media. So did you have any questions, any comments about this tool?
Not about the tool. I'm excited to utilize them. It's been a while since I've taken any of these types of surveys. I think the most interesting thing about the second one would be to find someone who you trust to give you their feedback and then try and find the average between those or find the places where the
Yeah.
biggest difference is so that you can start to plan places where you need to build leadership skills, because I think it does help narrow it down. But they look like great tools. I'm excited to
Mhm.
start to use them. If you could refresh me on exactly where I go find these in the nonprofit utopia world, I'd be grateful.
Okay. Yeah, there is a tool. Hold on just a moment. I did a couple articles over the past couple of years. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you see destinations, or are you still looking at the tool? At least, do you what do you see? Do you see the online tool, or do you see?
Sorry, I spoke, but maybe I clicked the wrong thing. I can only still see the tool. It's exactly where it was when you ended your presentation, so I don't see it changing.
Okay. All right. Good. Let me go to the community and I'll show you exactly where it is. Just bear with me. I'll switch over once I get to that tool. Yeah, you're not going to find them immediately. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing. All right, you won't find them on the front page, and I probably need to create new articles, but I'm going to share this. All right, can you see the 5 levels of leadership?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to show you how I got here. Okay, so if you go to our community, I have not yet put on, the news stream a new version of this article, so you're not going to see it immediately. So for right now, you're going to search the nonprofit Utopia community, and you'll do leadership as, doggone it, I got to get that space, as fit. So you click on leadership as fit. That is the tool. Here's an article, which is basically based on, the first page of her article. I don't see the tool itself. Bear with me. Leadership as fit, that's the wrong article. Leadership.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't think that it's popping up high on your list, you might just give us all a message.
Yeah.
How to search for it when you figure it out, or get it.
Yeah. But that's okay. No, that's quite all right. I do need to do this. All right, assessing your individual leadership style. Here it is. So the article is assessing your individual leadership style. And I think in a way it was good for you to see me go through that, because now you know that there are different ways you can go about searching for different tools. So the name of the article is Assessing Your Individual Leadership Style. And here's a PDF. So you just press onto that PDF and you see the tool that we just went through.
Yep, I see it. That was good. Thanks.
All right, and then you do this. We go through the same process for the other tool, and I'm going to make sure that I share articles that come up immediately. All right, so we're going to look at. We're going to look for the leadership assessment. You can see me searching, right? Is that correct?
Yep, I sure can.
All right. Now this one may not be as easy to find. Leadership assessment tool. Let's see, Maxwell. Okay, now for this one, it may take me longer. I think I need to follow your advice and get, you know, get you an article that you can get to immediately. All right. So trust me, it is there.
Oh
I'm
no,
just,
I believe you. There's just so much rich data in the platform that I enjoy it, and I get veered off and don't find my way back. So in this case, if you're directing us to something specific, it'd be nice to have that maybe with a search word or something that you put in the title that gives
yeah.
us a direct link.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. All right. So I'll do that. I'll make sure that you have those. All right. But thanks for asking because it lets me know that this is not as easy to navigate as one might think.
It's attractive and it seems really profoundly simple with all the colorful icons that you have, the thumbnails and things, but you see how much data you have. It gets, it's not overwhelming, it's encouraging, but when you're looking for something specific, especially if you're directing us to it, it'd be nice to know how to get right there.
Yeah, yeah. Especially since I was just there in order to share the stuff with you on the Zoom call. So there's something wrong with the way I'm categorizing, is what I'm saying. All righty. So that in a nutshell is what we're going to focus on. So our homework is to go through these tools. Um, on by Wednesday, we will review our initial findings. You know, it's not meant to be a judgment, and it's basically meant to help us, you know, look at our strengths, look at our weaknesses, prepare us for strategic planning, prepare us, most importantly, for doing our individual plans. All right. So any questions, any parting thoughts?
No, I think it was very comprehensive. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. And I want to thank those of you who joined us in Facebook, on YouTube, and all of our other live streams. This recording will be available shortly. All right. Take care. All right, Lisa,
Bye
you have
bye.
a great
Have a
one.
good day. I'll be in touch shortly. Thank you.
Uh huh. Okay. Bye bye.